everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I have a lot of special guests to join in, but I just wanted to say it's been about a week or so since Barry Morphew's case got dismissed. And so I thought, why not kind of talk about the whole case as a whole? And so I am bringing on a couple of special guests. So with me, we have a lot of people and we're waiting on a couple more, but I'm going to let them each introduce themselves. So let's first start with, oh my goodness, sorry. I'm still working on StreamYard. Let me start with Ed. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, good evening, folks. I'm Ed Wallace. I'm a retired first grade detective from the NYPD, and I spent most of my career as a certified senior crime scene analyst in the NYPD's crime scene unit.
Okay, and Duty Ron?
Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for letting me come on your show. I am a retired New York City police detective with 20 years in the service. I worked in fugitive enforcement in the parole task force and, just the largest police department in the United States. And I have my Crime Time with Duty Ron channel. And good to see all the esteemed guests that you have here on the panel. Hi, Mike, Linda, everybody.
And Mike, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. Mike King from Profiling Evil. Great to be with y'all.
And Linda?
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much, Lauren, for having me on. I'm Linda with It's a Crime. And I do all things true crime for the last 2.5 years and have a super passion for justice. And I like the patterns and connecting some dots.
And then Tisha, you live in Salida.
Hi, I'm Tisha Leewaye, and yes, I live here in Salida.
Perfect. Okay, so I called you each to this discussion because you all care about Suzanne and Suzanne's case. And so I first wanted to kind of go around the room real quick, kind of asking you guys, what made you guys follow the case? When did you start following the case? And why did you keep following the case? So let's go ahead and start with Duty. Ron.
Thank you, Lauren. Well, again, I cover true crime on YouTube, and I've been at this for quite a bit. And it was a case that was being spoken about across the United States. It took off. And, my good friend Mike King here covered it really well. And I followed along with him, bouncing ideas back off of each other. And, law enforcement professionals, we like to speak about these kind of cases. And that's what brought me to it.
Okay, what about Mike King? Why don't you talk about, what made you start following this case?
Well, like the rest of us, I think I was captivated by the fact that this beautiful mom disappears, and how does that happen, and how do we justify that happening in a day and age when we have technology and the power that comes in true crime, something that sometimes we can maybe push too far. I don't know, but was fortunate to have the family reach out and ask for some help. And I think that led me to, frankly, I think almost everybody here to chat along the way. And it's just been really an interesting journey to watch how we as YouTubers who do not have any authority, and I think that's such an important thing, can influence and remind people of what's going on.
And Tyson Draper, you just joined. Can you try to talk? Let's see if we're fixing the audio issues. We still don't hear you, Tyson. I'm sorry.
So throw him off the island till he gets his audio fixed.
Yeah. And Linda, I mean, you follow so many cases. What stood out to you in this case?
It was very similar to what Mike said. You hear this beautiful woman, mom, on Mother's Day in a small, tiny town go missing. I started right away. I was looking today. I think I started May 14th was the first video that I put out there. So it was really quick that heard the news, just see that. And yeah, it captivated so many people.
Tisha, you're local. I mean, what was it like to hear someone in your own town go missing, and that hadn't really happened before, right?
Right. It was kind of scary. I mean, to know that, I mean, she could have been kidnapped, you know, there is other stuff that could have happened. And then just kind of listening to the case throughout the first few months, you know, it was different.
Did you
Different.
know Suzanne personally?
So she came into the salon that I used to work at, her, Barry, and the two girls. So
I know, Tisha, you have to go soon, but I mean, since what has transpired, what has been, you know, the community's take or feeling after when Barry was arrested, and then now after the murder charges have been dropped?
I think from a lot of people that I've talked to, I think they are pretty, I guess.
Oh, sorry, guys. Okay.
You're
You're back on.
kind of disappointed, I guess I would say, in the way the case was handled. I think from the first time when he got arrested, I think everybody was pretty confident that he would be convicted. I mean, that's how I felt. And now he's out roaming our streets.
Is there a sense of people scared in the community because they still don't know who killed Suzanne, if Suzanne is killed, and they haven't gotten a body either?
Right. I think there is, to a point. Yeah. I mean, really, who wouldn't be? We don't know who it is. I think we felt a little bit more secure when he was at least on an ankle bracelet. That's just my feeling. Sure.
And I want to, mention that, Barry is presumed innocent. He has maintained his innocence since day one. You guys can jump in if you have any other questions for Tisha, since she is a local. And she's been around. She's gone to most, if not all, of the court proceedings in Chaffee County. And so, but now I want to talk to, I know Duty Ron and Ed, you guys got some documents in regards to the CODIS matches. Ed, you have a specialty in that. What did you see when you read through those court documents?
Well, first I want to say I'm Duty Ron's partner and co-host at Duty Ron, and I'm his forensics expert. So I did review the documents and the various proceedings, and there is no CODIS hit. Okay, there is no CODIS hit. I can't say it enough. Okay, a CODIS hit is all it is an investigative lead for the investigators involved here. This is a desktop search. So after the CODIS after the profile of the suspect DNA samples was developed, it was put into the local CODIS and the state CODIS, not the federal CODIS. It didn't meet the requirements for federal CODIS. Okay, so they put it in the local, and then the Colorado CODIS people sent out a notification to other states. Hey, please take a look at this. It's totally voluntary. Nobody has to do it. And other states did look at it. Chicago, Illinois, rather, looked at it. Arizona looked at it. And then even Maryland looked at it. And so they contacted the CODIS representative in Colorado. And they said, hey, take a look at these. This might be something. It might not be anything. Just take a look at it. And that's all it is. Okay. And they did look at it, and they did investigate it. The lead investigator for the Colorado Bureau of Investigation ran those down to the ground. Okay. And there was no hit. There was no match.
I know Iris Eaton, Barry Morphew's attorney, said in a press conference that the investigators didn't follow up on other leads. They really just focused on Barry Morphew. I mean, as an investigator, Duty Ron and Mike King, what was your reaction to that comment?
Mike, I'll let you go first since you're older than me.
Yeah.
Whoa, calling people out. Shots fired.
Yeah, that's good. you know, I guess I was like, why is anyone surprised? That's the defense's responsibility. Number one, to work their guts out and try to get their client the best deal they can and make sure that they're protected along the way. And there's no question that there were some changes in this case that made it really necessary that they pull the plug, they call uncle, and they come back another day to fight this thing. But that's what they do, is make noise. And I used to get offended when I was a young cop. I don't know, Ron, how you and Ed felt, but the first time you're ripped apart on the stand by a defense attorney about something that means nothing to the case, you walk away really angry. When you're an old, tired cop and retiring, that's like the best day on the planet when a defense attorney is attacking your personality or your family. That just means that the case isn't that good to talk about facts. And thanks, Ed, for calling it out. It's like, how many times do we need to say, hey, there's a 1 in 5 billion chance that there might be a suspect in this case other than something else? Okay, but you know what? It worked because the public focused on this boogeyman that caused a whole lot of talk.
Yeah. Yeah. And to piggyback onto that, Mike, you know, we all know that defense attorneys, that's their job. Their job is to create doubt for their client. And, you know, his defense attorney, as we know, she was, you know, putting out her chest and really just saying, look at me here, you know, this, we got you. And she threw out, and Ed and I covered this and spoke about it extensively on Crime Time with Duty, Ron. She threw out some really heavy accusations towards the prosecution with prosecutorial misconduct and things of that nature, which I thought was outlandish because, you know, again, she is throwing out these things and she pointed her finger at you. Which I was just for me, if I was there with you, I would have really given her a piece of my mind. But, you know, kudos to you for being a professional, Lauren. And, you know, you really handled that well. And I want to say thank you to you for being a professional and not getting sucked in, because she really wanted you to go off the rails there. And that's a part of what a defense attorney does. They're there to piss people off. And she did a great job of that.
Well, thanks, Duty Wrong. I was going to ask Linda from It's a Crime. I mean, you cover a ton of cases, and have you seen a lot of social media and publicity more so in this case than other cases that you follow?
Yes and no. I've seen a lot more hatred in this case, a lot of death threats, a lot of really bizarre behavior from viewers, more so than, or people close to the case, perhaps more so than many other cases. Yeah. I will say, if I could piggyback one more thing, Lauren, sorry.
Yeah.
While it's fresh in my memory, I want to just talk about what Ed said and Mike with the DNA. One of the things, and also Duty Ron, one of the things that was surprising to me was the lack of knowledge, or perhaps this is the tactic, of the CODIS match. Because I've been saying forever and a day on my channel, it's a partial match. It's not a match. It's not a match. But they're spending 1 day, 2 days, 3 days talking about how this is, you know, connected to somebody who did, you know, SA and all this other stuff. So my surprise was, why isn't the prosecution coming in and going, whoa, that's not a match? And it just carried on. This was that the preliminary, I want to say, that this started, and it was just days worth of that.
Yeah, I think it was even the last day of the preliminary hearing when Joseph Cahill was on the stand. They kept talking about that, and that confused even the judge. And,
Yes.
and that's one of the reasons why Barry Morphew was able to get bond.
I think you have more to add about this, about the misconceptions and the lack of education amongst some of the folks with CODIS, and we spoke about it a little bit today.
Yeah. See, there's a vocabulary gap here, and the defense attorney is taking advantage of the word hit. Well, it's not a hit. And there's no such thing as a partial match. It's either a match or it's not a match. There could be 7 loci in common, okay, and with somebody, but all that could be is a familia connection, okay, and that has to be looked at. And these things were looked at. So these other states contacted Colorado and they say, hey, look at this, okay. They don't tell us how many loci are involved. These are all unidentified people in the system, okay.
The perception that the defense kind of made was that there's these 3 sexual offenders that are connected to the Morphew case that are just out roaming free and that are connected to this case. And it was so confusing to viewers.
The Chicago's not, Tempe, not, Phoenix, not, and Maryland, not. They're not connected to this case. I can't say it enough. Okay. There is no match. Okay. You need 13 loci to get into CODIS in the federal system. Okay. And
can you explain what loci is?
Genetic markers. Okay. It's in the simplest terms. I mean, we don't want to get into the weeds here with this DNA. And that's how many prosecutors end up confusing juries and get into the weeds. Like, there was a case back in the day when DNA first came out and it was RFLP, refracted fragmented length polymorphism, that was used. And oh my God, the testimony by the DNA that was brought out by the prosecutor just confused all the jury, and needlessly. You don't need to get into the weeds with this thing. There's 13 in the United States. You need 13 genetic markers, loci, to have a CODIS hit and to put the information into the federal CODIS system. Okay, if you don't have that, it doesn't go to the feds. It doesn't go to the FBI. Okay, it could stay at a city level and a local and a state level, and could be shared state to state, but it can't get into CODIS, into the main CODIS at the FBI.
Tisha and Tyson, you guys have both, Tisha, you live in Salida, and Tyson, you've been to Salida many times. Was that the main concern and worry about this case? Was the CODIS matches?
Not really. I mean, we heard it, as you know, every day, all day long in court. And it just repeated itself. And I mean, I didn't feel like it was anybody outside in Phoenix and all those other places, because we kept listening and she just kept repeating everything. And it just didn't make sense to me that there was that big of a hit and it wasn't a hit. Do you know, like, it was just weird. So it didn't concern me at all. I wasn't afraid that there was someone out there that had a DNA match to Suzanne and all that. No, it didn't.
I know you guys have seen those, missing poster flyers and things like that of Suzanne. What were your guys' initial thoughts about the amount and also the terms of the reward? Tyson, do you have your audio now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just joining, Lauren. I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I got it.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Linda. Hi, Tisha.
Hey,
Hi,
Tyson.
everybody else. So, Lauren, you're asking about what now? The reward?
Yeah, and the terms of the reward. And what was your first initial thoughts about the term and the amount of the reward?
Well, I knew from day one that it was a bogus reward because of the amount and, just the circumstances surrounding it, how Barry said that he had a friend that was going to match the amount up to $100,000. I just knew it was a bogus reward. I knew that, it was because he probably figured that, nobody was ever going to find her body. So there was never going to be a reward. The whole thing was bogus from day one, in my opinion.
As law enforcement officers, do you hear of that big of a reward? Is that a small amount? And then also the terms, is that a typical term? Mike?
I'm not law enforcement, but Mike, what do you think on that? I mean, have you ever seen a reward that's $200,000? I thought that was real high, and I thought, heck, man, if I get that reward, I'm pretty much set for life.
Yeah, I'm wondering if when and if the cops recover Suzanne's body, if because I didn't see anything in there that said exclusive of government, so that'll be interesting. I mean, you see the reward depending on, some families have means. In Australia, you'll see those rewards shoot up there like that kind of regularly, and it's almost an indictment on us in America that we put a price tag on people based on a reward. It's almost like we should have a standardized fund that says, hey, here's what people should be given for helping out on these cases. So I don't know. I guess I just don't spend a lot of time looking at the rewards. What I do like to do, and Ron and Ed and I have talked about this, and Linda, I think you and I actually had a conversation about this once. The thing that's really more important than the award amount is the reward circumstance and what's motivating the reward. And there's a big difference in the way we see those things. I mean, Ron, I'll call you out when we talk about the West Boys. There's a big difference between an old retired dusty cop saying, I'm going to put $1,000 toward this, and somebody else saying, I'm going to put $100,000 toward it.
And we never, in every single press release that the sheriff's office put out, we didn't ever see at the bottom, there's a $200,000 reward, and these are the terms. And I just thought that was interesting too.
Yeah, I think, Lauren, that was a private reward that he was putting up himself. In the case, what Mike brought up with the missing boys in California City, out of Bakersfield now, was $125,000, but it was a combination of a whole bunch of different people. So it was businesses in California City. There was, private donations. Myself, channel, we put up donations. The family of the adoptive parents who are now in custody. So, and it was managed by the city manager in California City. I had spoken with her, Anna Machado. She had all of the accounting for the reward, and it was, there was stipulations to it. We didn't see any stipulations, and we did see Barry. I think it was Barry's nephew that talked about, we won't stop until we get her back. Remember that when the Facebook post was put up there? I got a bad vibe from that kid, and I don't know what has ever happened with him. I know it's got nothing to do with anybody being charged or anything, but that never really sat right with me as a detective. Right away, it cried foul. It didn't sound like it was genuine, and I could say the same thing for Barry's 26-second post on Facebook.
Lauren, can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah.
Well, I think he's talking about Trevor Noel. And, for me, I felt like Trevor was very sincere in the beginning. I felt like his heart was in the right place. And then all of a sudden he disappeared off the face of the earth, which begs the question, and has this entire time, of what happened to this guy and why was he so involved in the beginning and so worried about his aunt Suzanne. What did he learn? What did he find out that made him run off and hide? And I mean, this guy has been just completely vanished.
Yeah,
What?
I've sent him emails, and I know other people have sent him emails as far as, the GoFundMe and wanting to know what happened to that money and why, he did just kind of, that first week was on every single news station pleading for people for information in regards to his aunt, but then, kind of just disappeared. My question to you guys, as far as, what did you guys think about the prosecution, the evidence that they presented, and had we gone to trial, do you think there could have been a conviction?
Well, I'll jump in here and say, so in the initial reports that there were a little conflict between CBI and the sheriff's office as to how to proceed and how to move forward. I think maybe they acted a little too quickly and should have waited to obtain more forensic evidence and dotted their I's and crossed all their T's. I didn't see the need to rush into an indictment and a charging document at that time. I think they would have been better served had they had they pulled back a little bit and re-looked at it from a different perspective, and okay, and then identified things that needed to be done and things that needed to be shored up, and went in that route. And well, but I'm thanking God that we have a reset button now, because if he would have went to trial and he would have been acquitted, double jeopardy would have kicked in. And if they find the body later and there more forensic evidence comes and points towards him, there's nothing we could do about it.
Linda?
I'm with Ed too. One of the things that when I was looking through all the documents, reading through it, even the arrest affidavit, is like, yeah, there was some details there, but people were asking me, what do you think, Linda, about this? And I was the same. They need to find Suzanne. They need to find Suzanne. And just to piggyback to just the previous conversation, just so, while it's fresh, the timing is interesting with Trevor Noel and Barry. Trevor Noel got quiet right after Barry did his 25-second video. It was put up on the Facebook, and then it's hush. And Barry had two different theories that week. The first was the mountain lion, and then 2 days later was the abduction, the video, and then radio silence. So I just wanted to get in there because people know my timelines, and I have to get in these little details. So
Yeah. Well, thanks, Linda.
hopefully that answered both.
Mike, what about you? I mean, what did you think of the prosecution, the evidence that was presented?
Oh, I think a lot of people wanted to see somebody dying on a battlefield, and you got to be wise in these kinds of cases. And the cards weren't falling the way that they had hoped. I don't know if there was problems in what the state was providing to the defense. There's no question that they didn't meet the responsibility that they had under 16 to get the information over in a timely manner. Otherwise, the judge and the second judge wouldn't have said this is a violation. And you know what? When I think 12 or 14 of your 16 expert witnesses are put out to pasture, then you got to make a real interesting decision. And I was chief of staff in an attorney general's office. I watched this stuff happening over and over again, where if you're losing your expert witnesses, then it becomes a real game on how you're going to get them back in under cross-examination and try to prove them as a witness. Well, it was probably too much to bear at that moment. And sometimes it's better to throw a white flag up in the air and put your team back together and come back to fight another day.
Yeah, it cripples them, really.
Right.
Yeah,
Ron,
have you seen, like, when you present, or I mean, you're not presenting the case, but when you work on cases and you see it go to trial, are a lot of the defense counsels kind of doing what Barry Morphew's counsel did, where they're just trying to eliminate expert witness after expert witness?
Yeah. Well.
Sorry, Ron. Nobody. You might not like the defense, but they worked their tails off.
Yeah.
And they earned what happened here. History will show whether it was an unnecessary thing. I don't know, but they did exactly what we want a defense attorney to do in this system. And we may or may not like what the result was, but the criminal justice system, especially when it hits the court system, needs to be as pure as possible. And we need to get rid of all of these allegations that could lead to charges being overturned later or something else happening. So as painful as it may be, it's the right thing.
Yeah. Now, in many cases, no amount of lab work can correct mistakes made in the field by the crime scene investigators. So if you can attack the crime scene investigators and the forensic experts and you can discredit them, then everything they've done and everything they touched is tainted. Okay. And it doesn't bode well for a jury to see that and to hear that. And the fact that you didn't have a body doesn't mean that you can't get a prosecution. If you have a strong circumstantial case, that can also get you your prosecution and you're guilty. I had cases like that in New York City. I had the Kimes case, the mother and son con artists who killed Mrs. Irene Silverman in Manhattan to steal her mansion. We never found her body, but the overwhelming circumstantial forensic evidence we recovered from their belongings of surveillance, of forged deeds and a shopping list of death tools to purchase to in her demise. It all came together at trial, and they were convicted, and we didn't have a body, and we never found the body.
And circumstantial evidence should weigh the same as physical evidence, right?
Well, it depends on what it is.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, though, right, Ed? Is these cases shouldn't be on one form of evidence. It is a combination, and the beauty of forensics and physical evidence and circumstantial evidence and eyewitness is that it puts together a story that's powerful. You do it with just one leg of the stool, and you got a weak case.
I mean, I had notebooks and notebooks of surveillance that were done by these mother and son on their victim. I had roofies. I recovered roofies. I recovered flex cuffs. I recovered the list. Oh, got to go out and buy a shower curtain. Got to buy duct tape. Got to buy this. Got to buy that. They were living out of their town car, and the trunk was empty, and all their belongings were in the back seat. And the only thing in the back of the trunk was an empty duffel bag that you can fit a person in. I mean, it was the totality of all the circumstantial evidence that got us to the conviction.
And Tisha, this is one of the biggest cases in Chaffee County that you know of?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely a big one.
So maybe, these investigators, especially the deputies that first got on scene, they might have not gotten the evidence correctly, or I don't know. They're new to this. They didn't think that Suzanne, they thought maybe she was on a bike ride and had a crash, right?
Right. I would assume, and I don't know, but I would assume that they didn't know how to handle everything in the beginning. I mean, we don't get murders or missing people every day or even every year. This is the first one. And I don't even know how long it's been since we've had anything like this in this town. So, it was hard. And I think that I would assume that they would now, after this case, have a lot more training, I would hope, for all these new deputies and the old deputies that didn't really handle the case as well as they could have.
According to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, Chaffee County has 4 missing people in the county, but that's compared to like El Paso County and Colorado Springs, we have 39, and then Denver has 41. So just a comparison.
Yeah, I mean, like the biggest thing that we had, I don't know if any of you have heard of the Beverly, England. Somebody had just said it. She was missing for 30 years before they finally found some bones up Mount Chavano. Somebody had come across some bones that they actually thought was a pioneer, and they tested it and it was her. And then, they found out supposedly who may have done it, but the DA at that time did not want to go through with that case either. So that is an unsolved case also.
Okay. And when did that happen?
Oh gosh. Probably 30 plus years ago. They just found her about 5 years ago, found the bones.
Wow.
So it's been a long time, but I have to go.
Okay,
so
thanks, Tisha, for joining.
I just want to let everybody know, though, that we are having a vigil for Suzanne Saturday, May 14th. There will be bracelets and T-shirts sold, and some of the proceeds will go to the Alliance Against Domestic here in Salida, in Chaffee County. So please, everybody come, show up, show your support for Suzanne, and just visit with everybody who's on this case and everything.
Well, thank you for doing that. That's awesome. I know you did last year's when it was Suzanne's 50th birthday. You helped organize that and helped other vigils as well. So thank you for all that you've done for Suzanne in this case.
Yeah, thank you guys for all helping on this case, and keep it going.
Thank you, Tisha.
All right.
Thank you
guys.
Bye, Tisha.
And Sarah joined. She's my photographer. I hope I unmuted you. I think there you go.
I had myself muted because my dogs were down here.
Okay. I just wanted to talk to you guys each kind of, what was your most significant event to you in this case?
Well, I'll jump in here because we did this on our show with Ron. We showed video news footage of the deputies taking the bike off the hill, and I was, my hair curled when I saw how it was done, and I couldn't understand why it was done. Okay, you're thinking you're dealing with a missing person, then now you're thinking there's possibly a vehicular accident with the bicyclist. Well, how did that bicycle get to that spot? Is it a vehicle accident, or was the bike thrown there? Well, we'll never know now because they didn't treat it like a crime scene. They didn't protect the evidence that may have been on the bike. Touched it with bare hands. And I hate to be critical of my fellow men and women in blue, but this should not have happened. That bike should have just been left there. There was no reason to move it. They should have called at least an accident investigation or a crime scene investigation. And I always teach my crime scene investigators, you only have one opportunity at this crime scene, okay? And you need to treat everything to the highest standard. So if you treat everything as a homicide and it turns out not to be a homicide, then no harm, no foul. But if you treat it to a lesser level and you don't give it the forensic evidence attention that it deserves, and now you lost that forensic evidence, now we have the foul. So you thought it was a missing persons case, or you thought it was an accident and it wasn't properly investigated. And now, you had that bike that was moved by a deputy. It wasn't photographed, wasn't sketched, wasn't measured. They didn't look for signs of damage. They didn't think about other forensic evidence that may be around that in the plant life. No gloves, DNA, the officer's DNA. Was the officer's DNA collected off that bike? Because they collected DNA off that bike. Was it eliminated? I don't know all the answers to these questions. And then they bring the bike back to the husband and the daughter's boyfriend, and they touch the bike. It was just, from a crime scene perspective.
And Ed, to piggyback off of that, because we did cover that part, it didn't end there. It went on into the home. So we just saw that was an investigator's nightmare, especially you're a teacher, Ed. So we spoke about this and the importance of having folks that are in the field, and if they're not qualified, then to back out, isolate and contain the scene, and have somebody come in that's qualified to do it. So that was the biggest, just horror. It was a horror show for us to see that, and we support our men and women in blue. But at the same time, if we see something wrong, we got to call it out, and that's what Ed and I did.
And that was something Barry Morphew mentioned to you when you got to talk with him, was that, investigators or deputies, they went across the road many times and touched the bike and things like that.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And, when the body cam footage came out, we saw that Barry was actually telling the truth. The bike was handled. It was moved up the hill. It was parked down by the police cruiser. And then when Barry showed up from Broomfield that night and he got with his buddy George Davis, they walked down to the bike. They were handling it. It was just, and like he mentioned right there a while ago, you got to give credit to our police officers for the job that they do, but I think that they were kind of in over their heads. They weren't used to seeing this kind of stuff, and there was a lot of mistakes, in my opinion.
Mike, what was the biggest event for you?
Oh, I think, I called Tyson right after he published his video, and I put the bright lights on Tyson and interrogated him, and we became really good friends during that period of time. And Tyson, I just, again, you have played such an important role in some information that came out that hopefully one day courts will see. But for me, the alibis, it's always interesting when you see someone who's pointing fingers at everybody else in the world but themselves. And I think that's the thing that troubled me the most from the beginning, is we had a boogeyman that we were looking for. We had the mountain lion, the bicycle, and I was so outraged by the mountain lion that on my little show, we brought in the Mountain Lion Foundation experts. We mapped out how far a mountain lion will drag its prey, what the behaviors of a mountain lion are when they do get prey, how feasible it is that they can pick up something and pristinely carry it without a drag mark or a piece of blood or any kind of physical evidence being left behind. And how far will a mountain lion even live? How many mountain lions are there in a area? I was just incensed by that, and
that was one of the first thing he said as soon as he got out of the truck was it a mountain lion? You know.
Yeah, and that dog just didn't hunt.
Well, Lauren, actually, the first thing he said is, "Where's the bike?" You know, instead of "Where's my wife?" and being concerned about her, he was more worried about the bike. But then, shortly thereafter, he introduced the mountain lion theory and said, "You know, a lion." So he was trying to coach, you know, the law enforcement from the very beginning on this mountain lion theory. You know, and the officer had really, I mean, based on his reaction, he didn't really know what he was talking about. You know, and Barry was introducing that very early on.
You know, Ron and I have profiled a lot of cases on our show. The Gabby Petito, also Cassie Carly, and more recently also Naomi case. And we also did our two boys from Bakersfield and so forth. And you look at how families are missing their loved ones, and you look how they react and how they don't react. You look at what's reasonable and normal, and then you see things that are not reasonable and not normal, and it just jumps right at you. Listen, anybody on this panel, if you were missing a loved one, you would move heaven and earth to be out there looking for your missing loved one. There wouldn't be a day that I would not be out there until I found her or I found them, or whatever the case may be. You couldn't stop me, if you were law enforcement, from searching and looking for my missing loved one, my child, or whatever the case may be. I don't know about you, but I didn't see that here.
Yeah, Sarah and I had just covered the Gannon Stout case, and I know that Linda from It's a Crime, you did too. And, you know, even the little girl who's like 8 or 9 years old went on video and was begging for whoever had taken her brother to come forward. And they did their broadcast and their video through the sheriff's office, which was very different than what Barry Morphew had done. Linda, what stood out to you through this whole time?
You just touched on it. As soon as I saw that 25-second video and then Tyson's video, and I started seeing these inconsistencies, wait a minute, he's been married for how long? 20 some years, and he put out a 25-second video, and it's not helped by the authorities. It was just on his own. And then I'm starting to see these just odd behavior, not at the vigil, not helping with the search when they went with Andy Mormon and Profiling Evil. And, you know, it's just really weird. It just kept standing out to me. And just when you think, okay, you know, let's just sit back for a minute, boom, another weird thing. And yeah, those are the main things. And then in the other part of it, I'm a little confused about cadaver hits. That stood out to me, and why certain things weren't searched. I would love to dive into that with, you know, an expert down the road. But that was something that stood out too. You're seeing these cadaver searches, and they're hitting on the bobcat. They're sitting down on the seat, but yet it's not related to the case. Well, who are they hitting on then?
Yeah, and Sarah and I, we never really heard much in the courtroom about what those cadaver dogs hit and things, and they never really brought the handler to the stand or anything. I mean, the trial hadn't happened or anything, but it would have been nice to hear from them during the preliminary hearing. Sarah, you were with me behind the scenes, so what was kind of your take on this whole 2 years? It's been nearly 2 years. What was the biggest event for you?
There was a lot. Just being out there and kind of experiencing it, watching how everyone reacted in the courtroom between Barry, his attorneys, the girls, different things like that. I think the biggest thing for me, obviously the biggest shocker was finding out about Jeff Libler, but I guess the thing that stands out for me a lot is when they talked about his multiple trash runs, because in my mind, it just doesn't make sense that, he said that, he's cheap. So that's why he was throwing them out at multiple locations and stuff like that. But then when you look at pictures of his car or his truck the day they got back, it's disgusting. So it's like, what did you actually clean out of it? And I know for me personally, when I throw trash away, I do it all at the same time. I just want to get it all out of my car. So that was just something that stood out to me, that he felt the need to make all these trash runs, change his clothes, and just go to all these different lengths to get rid of a few things in his truck. And so that was just something that also stood out to me just the whole time. I just thought that was so odd.
Can we talk about the dart sheath cap that was found in the dryer, and how that there was no DNA of Barry Morphew on that, but there were other people, like one of the daughters and Suzanne. How could that have happened in the dryer? Can someone explain that to me?
Ed?
So the item was allegedly washed and then put into the dryer, and then after it was recovered from the dryer, tested, and the DNA for the daughters were discovered on it. Okay, so that meant, but it was still in the dryer at the time. Okay, you can have some cross-contamination issues, but it has to happen after the clothing was washed and dried. Okay, and so somebody went in there and maybe took out an article of clothing, and then by reaching in there, touched this other article that has their DNA on it now, and they only took out what they wanted and left that behind with their DNA on it. So that's a total possible scenario to how something like that can occur. But then that would mean that he didn't go in there and touch anything and remove anything, because he didn't his DNA is not found on that article of clothing. That article, the bedspread it was, right? A sheet.
Yeah, there were sheets and other people's clothes from the house, Mallory's and Macy's.
Yeah, I've seen my kids do this time and time again. They're looking for an article of clothing. They go into the dryer. There it is, but it's mingled in there with the rest of the clothing. They only take what they want and leave behind everything else, and leave us to go fold everything and put everything else away.
Thank you.
It tells you who's doing the laundry, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that Suzanne will be found one day?
I hope and pray.
I do.
I believe they have a location that they're looking at. They just can't get to it right now for excavation. It's under snow and frost and so forth. So hopefully when that situation reverses itself, they'll get up to that location and dig it up.
Yeah, that's a big statement to make in court, to not be backing up somehow.
Yeah.
Were you shocked to see it actually in the motion, and that's kind of why they dismissed the case or dismissal?
I asked the criminal defense attorney, Joe Murray, who's a good friend of ours. He is always on our channel talking, and he said that he's never actually seen wording like that ever in his whole time. He's been doing this for 20 years.
That leads me to believe they have good information, solid information on it. Now, understand that property is no longer in the possession of that family, and somebody else owns it now, and they can give consent to law enforcement to go up there and start doing a dig.
So
I know
my
a lot of
biggest
people
question,
said, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just curious, and they may have talked about this in court or in the motion, because I didn't go with you every day, but I was just curious where this new information came from that led them to this location, and if they've had this spot in mind for a while, why has it taken them 2 years to actually look through it? I understand, even now it's under 5 whatever feet of snow, but there's been multiple summers since she's been missing. So that's why I'm just kind of wondering where this location came from and why we're just now looking into it.
Well, it could be new information, Sarah. It couldn't. Maybe they didn't know about it a year or two ago. In these cases, leads come in Like Mike and I and Ed will talk about. One door will open, we'll walk down a corridor, and then there'll be 5 other doors that you got to go looking through. And when you start looking through these other doors, you run into these things. So it could be very possible that within the last 6 months or within the last 2 weeks or 5 weeks, they came up with this information. So because we're on the outside looking in, right? We don't have access to their case file and everything that they've got. We know that they exchanged with the defense all of their discovery, but they are not able to talk about what was released incomplete and whole to the defense. And, you know, the defense and prosecution, they keep that to themselves.
Or they couldn't maybe they knew earlier, but they couldn't establish probable cause to get a warrant to go up there because he had constitutionally protected rights to that property that he was not waiving, right? He wasn't going to give consent. And if they can't get probable cause to get a judge to give him a warrant to go do a dig and search for a body there, then maybe they couldn't do it at that time.
Yeah.
I just figured it was probably new information. I just didn't know if it was, you know, a neighbor that finally came forward and said something. I just wasn't sure if somebody had actually given them new information that they just haven't released yet.
We'll only know that at the new trial.
Well, they certainly did tip their hand at the end, didn't they?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people say, you know, in Colorado Springs and even in Salida, there's no snow on the ground. But people got to realize that those mountains surrounding where the Morphews live, they're thousands and thousands of feet above where the Salida and the town is. So there's tons of snow still there. And I think Monarch Mountain, which is the ski area, they don't produce any fake snow, and they just closed down the ski resort. So there's enough snow for people to ski. And so even though, you know, folks in Salida say there's no snow here, they should be digging, you know, things like that. You got to remember this must be really high in elevation.
And I would present this question to everybody here. Who do we know that would have the means to get Suzanne up into a remote area, you know, and have the means and have the machinery or have the tools to get her into such a remote area? I can only think of one. So, you know.
You have to also, go ahead, Linda.
Sorry. And he almost gave directions in Tyson's video.
Mm-hmm.
He said it right from the beginning in Tyson's video. He said, don't look here, don't look right there, don't look right there. We got that covered already.
Right.
He outed himself right from the beginning. I said that right, Tyson? Like,
yeah, Linda,
would you agree?
Linda, we talked on the phone before about that when you were narrowing down the triangle area. And I was so convinced after our conversation that I drove from Arizona back up there to Maysville and put my boots on the ground and went out there and looked in that area with a bunch of snow on the ground, because I am truly convinced that Suzanne is in that area. And I do believe that where you and I narrowed it down to, and many others, she's going to probably be found right in that same area, close to the Morphew home.
I agree. I did a really fascinating video, I want to say a week ago. It was before the case was dismissed. And it's fascinating what the Body Farm is doing with forensics. And they're doing a study, it's been for the last few years now, on trees and how cadavers will or could change the trees and the foliage depending on, you know, what am I trying to say? They make these cadaver decomposition islands, basically. And so they're hoping that it will help authorities find a human body just by the changes in foliage. They have a few obstacles to go through. That's what they're doing. And I found it fascinating. And it just, I couldn't help but think, oh my gosh, how amazing would that be if they could narrow it down and see and find Suzanne if she was under a tree or around a tree just based on the foliage. I found that fascinating. Mm-hmm. And they were even talking about the differences between a body who perhaps was a smoker, and they could see that. They're testing that theory. And I mean, then it made me think of Suzanne and her battle with cancer and how that would change. It was fascinating, anyways. I just something that was amazing.
Judy, Ron, and Ed, and Mike, have you guys worked with a cadaver dog? What's that like? Can you kind of go into that if you have experience with a cadaver dog?
Well, I have, and I'm a graduate of the Body Farm, and I've worked there, and I have many friends there that teach there at the University of Tennessee. And we've always known that when you do a clandestine grave, shallow clandestine grave, or even a deeper clandestine grave, that the indigenous plant life will feed off of the body. It is a nutritious source for the plants to grow. And so you'll have growth spurts in the indigenous wild plant life around where the body is. And it'll be much different than what's on the outside of the body. And we've studied that. That's been known. And yes, with cadaver dogs, yes, I've worked with cadaver dogs as well. Ground penetrating radar. We've used all these things. We've had several sites that we brought the cadaver dogs out to search when we had intelligence that said that we had possible buried bodies at different locations throughout New York City. Sometimes on the freshly laid concrete in a garage we did, and we had poke some holes through the concrete. The cadaver dogs would come by and sniff and see if they can pick up scent. I had a dig in Staten Island where the mafioso grave ground was found when they were constructing a strip mall. And we had the dogs there, ground penetrating radar, and we found all these buried bodies out there using various forensic techniques.
And
I have a question, Ed.
They were there for years, those bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the person that dismembered these bodies in a bathtub in Brooklyn put them in suitcases and then buried the suitcases. So the clay and the mud and the water didn't really get to the body parts to do their degradation of the body parts as it would if you would have just put the body parts into the ground by themselves.
Mike, do you have one more word? I know you got to go. You're in Europe, right?
I
am, and I'm old and I'm tired.
What's your final take on this whole case?
Just as Ed was talking, I was having flashbacks to a redheaded woman out in the Uinta Basin many years ago when I was leading the cold case unit, and we had a cadaver dog hit on a abandoned well, and we ended up drilling down into that well several hundred feet and finally pulled out a hair and made the case. And so I'm a believer, but it isn't, you don't do it based on one dog. You do some independent testing and you kind of eliminate and you move forward. But forensics has never been at the level in policing that it is today. And for bad guys or bad girls, that is something to keep looking over your shoulder about. Could you imagine if you were responsible for something as horrendous as taking a life, how you'd be looking over your shoulder every stinking day? And at what point does it become just not worth it? And to all of you, it's so fun to be on with you, but mostly Lauren, it's been fun to watch you through this process. And you've taken some hits and you get over it because that's what you chose to do. And but you have rallied and banged the drum for Suzanne from the very beginning. And of anybody on this call, you've been the one that's kind of been in the saddle. You've taken some hits professionally and personally. And I just salute you, because unless somebody out there has been in the saddle, you don't have rights to critique. And to all of you, I've watched you. It's been really fun. And what a reminder to us that we've somehow built this little community where we have people that listen to us yammering on, and we better darn well be responsible in what we're yammering about, because there are people's lives at stake when we do this. And our job is just to inform and pass on open an opportunity for communication. So I'm going to go down and hit the shower and eat a French croissant and go back to my meetings.
Well, thank you, Mike, so much for joining us, and you spoke it beautifully. That was great. Thank you so much.
Mike,
Good
it's
to
good
see
to see
you.
you, brother.
Yeah,
Mike,
Mike.
Yeah, thanks. It's so
Bye,
good
Mike.
to see you.
Take
Au
care.
revoir.
Stay well,
Oh,
Mike.
there you go. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I just want to say, are you guys thinking that this case is going to be refiled?
Yes.
I do too. But I think they should shake up the team a little bit. Maybe a different prosecutor, to get a fresh set of eyes on this. No, not taking anything away from the people involved, but you got a reset button now. You got a second chance at this. Let's get a fresh team and look at it from that perspective.
100%, Ed. I concur.
Lauren, I think it's going to take a miracle, but I believe that Suzanne's going to get that miracle. I believe it's going to be refiled someday, and I believe we're going to find her body too. So,
Linda, how do you think this is going to get resolved?
I think so too. I hope she's found, and I hope she comes with answers. That's the other thing. She comes with answers.
Sarah?
I definitely think this will go to trial again, only because there's so many people, not even just within Salida, but I mean, obviously all of us and everybody outside of the community that are so passionate about this case that want to see justice and want to see an end, whether that's Barry or somebody else or whatever the outcome is. There's just such a community that wants answers for her, and I don't think anybody's going to give up until those answers are found.
Do you guys have any last words you guys want to talk about? Any subject we didn't hit on? Yeah,
I have a
listen.
question. It's more what Ed was saying about the cadaver hits. What if a body is deep under a tree, like 15 feet or more under a tree? How does that work for cadaver dog hits? And can you still kind of will it still work with the change in foliage and that kind of thing still?
Well, you expect the decomp gases to make their way up through the soil and break the soil and get out into the air. It depends now, if the body was buried and then a tree is then placed on top of the body.
Yes.
Well, there's funny things that happen with roots of trees. If a root is seen now growing through a decomping body, now we have an order of how things occurred. Hole was dug, body placed in, tree placed on top of body, root system grew through the body. There's only one way that could happen. Okay. Right. And it's not by accident.
Right.
Okay. So there's many things that you can do and I know with insects, for instance, if maggots are feeding on a body, we've had cases where we found maggots. We then tested the maggots only to find the victim's DNA in the maggot because the maggot was eating on the victim. Now, trees have their own DNA. Plant lives have their own DNA. But if they're feeding on a body, can we find in the plant life the DNA of the person that it's maybe feeding from? And that would be an interesting endeavor to look into.
Yeah.
Once the recovery is made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on the tree itself, I'm saying, is there a way to, if a body is being used as the nutrient for plant life, can we find in the plant itself the victim's DNA? I'd like to do some research on that. Maybe call the body farm up.
We had the director of the body farm, Dr. Murray Marks, on with us, and we also had Ian Dodura from Australia. He's the bug doctor. Ed has so many connections that we've had just a wealth of forensic. The anthropologist, the forensic odontologist, these will all come into play here. They'll have a forensic dentist out there. They'll have the bug doctor.
Right. And a forensic botanist. That's the plant expert.
Yeah. Yep.
I spoke with a coroner and he told me that you can get a toxicology report even 10 years since the body was in the ground or whatever from the bone marrow. And I didn't even know that you could do that.
Yes, yes. There's a famous case there was a Bulgarian dissident that was living in exile in London, and back during the Cold War, and the KGB went there and assassinated him by shooting a pellet of ricin into his calf as he was walking on the streets of London. And they never could figure out how he died, because he died 48 hours later of multiple organ failure. But it was only until the collapse of the Soviet Union that KGB records were found that said that this was what was done. And they exhumed the body from the grave many years later and found the toxicology results for ricin in the bone.
Yeah.
Wow.
The technology we have today is just
Fascinating.
crazy compared to years and years ago, even.
That's why it's crazy that people even try to do anything.
Right.
You know, it's like you got to look over your back out these days with DNA and solving 50-year-old cases.
Well, there's always sociopaths and narcissists that think they're smarter than everybody else.
That's
and
true.
can get away with these things. And I'm here to tell you, it's not going to happen.
Not these
All right,
days.
so I have a question for the professionals, because this is something I've been thinking about since they kind of, released that they had a spot that they were looking in. So first, if she has been buried in a certain spot for so long, and because, it's been covered in snow, would her body have decomposed? And if not, when they go to excavate that area, how cautious do they have to be? And how does that process look to make sure that, they don't accidentally dig, part of her up or hit something that, could ruin evidence? So how does that whole process kind of work?
It works by hand. You don't use heavy machinery in something like this. You grid the location out, you map the location, you look for anomalies in the land, in the topography that shows, okay, here's a divot here. Well, why is this divot here? Is it because the body was buried under here and then the cavity of the body collapsed over time? And then you look for that extra growth in the plant life. Okay, why is this particular area growing so much larger than the plant life around it? What's feeding it, right? So you find these locations out, you get the dogs, you get the ground penetrating radar, you use that all on the surface, you map everything out. Yes, you can sometimes use LiDAR and other technology to help look for anomalies in the ground, and then you go search that. Then it's an archaeological dig. I have a lot of respect for somebody that can dig a 6 foot deep by 5 foot wide and by 6 foot long hole with a paintbrush and a trowel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, plus you got to remember that she would have been in the ground for almost 2 years now. So we've had changing seasons. We've had summers, and stuff like that. So I would imagine that it's going to be completely decomposed,
Absolutely. And there's insects down there. There's all kinds of bugs down there and worms and other animals that have taken their toll on the body.
Does the elevation change things?
Well, yeah, the frost, the constantly changing frost line, the thawing and the freezing of that location is going to impact as well. And, at those heights, the temperatures are much colder than at sea level. So all of those things are going to impact. And the lack of oxygen, the thinning of oxygen, all of that impacts what's going on.
Well, I remember, Lauren, when I went to Idaho when JJ and Tylee were discovered in Chad Daybell's backyard. And what they did is they just put a little tent over the area. And then just like he said, it became like an archaeological dig. And so I'm assuming that's what they'll do. I mean, I don't think when we do discover Suzanne, I don't think she's going to be as deep as, some people speculate. I think Barry was in a hurry. He was rushed. He was nervous. I don't think he's going to go out there and dig, even though he probably had the capability with his tractor and all that. I don't think he's going to go out there and dig a 15-foot hole. I could be wrong, but, I just think she's going to be, in a shallow grave somewhere.
When I covered the Patrick Frazee case in Teller County here in Colorado, and I was in the courtroom when they were showing what kind of you guys are talking about, an archaeology kind of dig or whatever, they only found a partial tooth. But I mean, like what you were saying, Ed, they took paintbrushes and sifters to try to find any piece of any type of evidence that linked that area to a body and things like that.
That's how we're trained with the forensic anthropologists training us. And when we dig the soil up, we put it in buckets, bring it over to the sifter, and then we have multiple sifters with different size grades, and we'll sift back and forth, and then things will be separated by their size, and then we have to go through each item to see if we have bones, tissue, organs, what are we dealing with, teeth, and then from that tooth you can extract DNA from the pulp. So there's a lot of different ways to get to this.
Ed, we sifted through remains of the World Trade Center for months and months at the Staten Island landfill, right in your hometown.
Right.
And that's exactly how it was done. It was done on a conveyor belt, and I was over there, and we were in Tyvek suits, and it sifted everything down, and we separated and, you know, went through it by hand. Every bit of that 16-acre site was processed through.
And then when you guys found something, you brought it over to my table at the crime scene, and we had our anthropologists, we had our odontologists, and we looked at them, determined whether this was a bone, was an animal or a human, whether it was butchered or was a part of the collapse of the building. And then, you know, we separated things by that. We put the body parts and organs and tissue in the reefer truck, and then delivered every day, 2 deliveries a day to the medical examiner's office to extract DNA.
Yeah. What I found fascinating too is the forensic odontologist telling us that one tooth is all they need. And the pulp from the tooth, it doesn't matter how old or how long it's been there. They could take that tooth, and get 100%. He called it the gold standard. Remember that?
Right. Dr. Larry Delbrin. Right.
Does it change things? Well, someone asked us about, like, if a body's in a container versus not in a container, does that change anything when it comes to decomposing and things like that?
Well, it could expedite the process, or it could hinder the process, depending on how what kind of container it is, and what the humidity and the heat and the moisture, seasons of the year, all of these things impact what else is in there in the container. Did they throw any chemicals in? Did they try to throw lye in there to expedite the decomp?
Someone's asking, why are you guys assuming that she's buried? From the motion?
From the motion.
From the motion, the dismissal without prejudice?
Yeah.
Well, the big thing for me is, because I know obviously there's no body, so theoretically, yes, she could still be alive. But for me, I just have a hard time believing that, as sad as it is. Obviously, you know, we'd all love her to just come walking down the street again. But it's hard for me to think that, only because she was so close with her girls. And you would think after so long, you wouldn't be able to just keep going without communication with anybody, whether it's her family or the girls or anything like that. So as sad as it is, it's just kind of hard to believe that that's kind of the only outcome right now. But then, yeah, obviously the motion of them saying that they're searching in a specific spot and digging in a certain area, I mean, you kind of just have to come to terms with that.
This is not Hollywood, all right? It takes a lot of planning and research to just fall off the face of the earth. And you have to have skill sets, and you have to have planned this out thoroughly. So, you know, this might not be what people want to hear, but when you do an investigation like this, you have to look at both sides, okay? And what was she researching? What was she looking at? I mean, and then if
was she really wanting to go to Ecuador? Like, the defense, you know, was at one point in the preliminary hearing, you know, leaning towards.
Right, but if that's the defense, you as an investigator have to be able to investigate and see if you can punch holes in that. Okay, can you disprove their theory? Okay, can you find evidence that suggests that this in fact did not happen? I mean, no credit card use, no bank withdrawals, no phone calls, no text messages, no social media, nothing.
No passport, no flights,
nobody.
Zero. I mean, it's zero proof of life. And I mean, we can sit around and say anything could have happened. You know, she could have ran away with the circus or whatever. But when you have zero proof of life for this long, I mean, it leaves, in my mind, zero doubt.
Yeah.
So I had a question too, as far as, you know, the whole decomposing process. If, you know, that did happen and they were able to at least find bones or something, how could they use that to then determine a cause of death? If she has completely decomposed, how do they look at that and try to come up with something, or is there even a way to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if she was strangled to death, then you would look for a broken hyoid bone. If she was beaten, blunt force trauma, then you would look for blunt force trauma to the bones as well, fractures to the bone. If she was stabbed, you would look for cutting on the bone, stab marks on the bone, or slice marks on the bone. If she was cut up or so forth, you'd look for tool marks, saw marks, things of that nature. If she was shot, you would look for ballistic damage. If she was poisoned, then you try to get toxicology out of there. And then obviously the identification, odontology, if the mandibles are there and the teeth are there, you do that through antemortem versus postmortem examinations, and then you extract DNA from bones, from teeth, hair, fingernails, teeth. These are some of the last things that survive on bodies. Very difficult to get them to fully decomp.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah. Lauren, Ed and I said we had 30 minutes. We're here.
Yeah, I know, and you guys gone way over.
He's got to get up.
I got to get up in the morning.
Yeah, so.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us on here. It was really great information that you guys shared, so we really appreciate it.
Yep. You can follow Ed and I on Crime Time with Duty Ron, and Linda and Tyson. These guys all have great channels, and they got great stuff that they're doing. And Lauren, thank you so much for your investigative reporting that you do. You're a consummate professional, and I back you up 110%. I said to Ed the other day, if I was there, I would have tackled that attorney and dropped it to the ground. But no
violence, no violence. But
yeah.
It was totally unwarranted. What happened was over the top.
Yeah.
Terrible.
You were not the cause for a change of venue. I'll just tell you that right now.
And it didn't even make sense.
Yeah, it was silly.
No.
Well, thank you guys.
All right, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Linda and Tyson, is there anything else you guys, and Sarah, is there anything you guys want to discuss further?
I can't really think of anything. What about you, Linda? What's on your brain? You always got something.
I know, I'm always thinking, right? I mean, so much. There's so many things to talk about.
Yeah.
I think everybody was in shock when they first heard about the dismissal, but then when you read the actual motion, it made sense.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tyson? The same thing?
Well, when I was contacted by the FBI, John Grusing, I think his name was, and he was asking about my video. That was one of the concerns that I had very early on, based off of the information that he gave me at that time, was that maybe they were jumping the gun a little bit in filing, these charges against Barry and proceeding. But, you put total faith and trust in these guys that they know, what they're doing and they're ready and stuff like that. And this isn't to say that they weren't, but, I don't think in all the years that I've studied true crime and watched these cases, I don't think I've ever seen anybody that was brought up on charges and then the charges were dropped right before the trial. So this is really a unique case. And
it's complex. Even the judge said it's a very complex case.
Absolutely. And Lauren, I think there's a lot of stuff that we don't know going on behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely. Throughout the court proceedings, they said, we are still investigating this case. And people need to remember that.
Yeah.
And, when the case got dismissed, but without prejudice, people need to realize that was the prosecution's doing, because they believe they have a good idea of where Suzanne is.
Yeah. Well, the daughters and Barry and their lawyers and stuff, they were in total celebration mode. They were I saw one of the daughters skipping out of the courtroom and I almost threw up, to be honest with you. It was disgusting because, Suzanne's missing. That's their mom, and they're skipping out. And so, there's just so many things about this case that does not make sense. We've talked about it for a couple of years now, every single one of us. But I think that there's more to the story. The lawyers came out and said there's zero. I don't know if you guys saw this article, but they said there's zero chance of this case being him being charged again and it coming back. But you know, of course they're going to say that, but you know, it makes me wonder.
They even said there's 0 ounce of physical evidence that connects Barry Morphew and the disappearance of Suzanne Morphew.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, well, you know what? They're going to say that, and they're going to say whatever they want. But the fact of the matter is, they do have very strong circumstantial evidence, and this is far from being over. You know, I think it's just a good time for them to call a timeout, get all their ducks in a row. And
it's like on pause. Everything's on pause right now.
Absolutely.
Before a jury was ever seated, which means, you know, Barry Morphew could face new charges, you know?
Yeah. Well,
we have a question for you, Tyson. What do you think Barry Morphew was doing in the river when you were around that area?
Well, you know, this was about 3 weeks after Suzanne went missing. It was early June, and you know, anybody's guess is as good as mine, Lauren. But to me, what I saw on his face that day was he was totally distraught. He was just completely out of his mind. He had his shirt off. He was banging on the steering wheel. He was soaking wet. He was bright red, you know, his chest area. And so to me, I think he was in the water somewhere. You know, he's looking around, and, you know, my mind has gone back and forth all this time about he could have, you know, been looking for her, or he could have been moving her, you know. So in the beginning, I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt and saying, well, his wife's been missing for 3 weeks, so maybe he was just out looking for her. But, you know, as this case has rolled along, it's obvious, you know, that there's you know, what he's done. And so maybe he was out moving her. I just don't know, Lauren, to answer your question.
Didn't he say he's been searching and that's what he was doing?
Yeah, he said he was out searching, you know, and he's never stopped. But, you know, everything that's come out of Barry's mouth has been a lie. I don't think he's searched for her at all, period. He doesn't have any need to search for her. He knows exactly where she's at, in my opinion. So, you know, now, but early on, I didn't know. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, you know.
And watching at his little Airbnb.
Right near where the Morphews used to live.
Yeah. Do you want me to read this little bit, Lauren, just for where she's at where they think she is?
Yes, why not? Yeah, if you have
it just says, I'll just do the little bit here. It says, specifically, the area law enforcement has been focused on is in a remote and mountainous region nearby the Morphew residence. This area received a significant amount of snow over the winter months before a search could be completed. To date, the area has 5 feet of snow, concealing the location where the people believe Miss Morphew is located. As a result, the people cannot safely excavate this area and resolve this unanswered question. So they believe she's near the Morphew residence. And we know that Barry preferred, even though he has multiple, what's it called? Restraining orders, he still chose to live right near the Morphew residence. And we know just from the gold video that Tyson did that he created the map. Barry created the map.
Yeah, Linda.
And it's interesting that they said they need to wait until it's safe. Like it's unsafe right now. So, I mean, there's a ton of mountainous and terrain. Like the terrain is very tough around the Morphew home, and if it's under a lot of snow, that's going to make it even tougher.
Yeah, Linda, to piggyback off what you were saying there with the Airbnb, you know, you and I talked last year also about when Barry was putting up the trail cams.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was, you know, in that same area around his house when Andy came out, we did the search.
The triangle.
He was putting up those, and so he's kept a close eye, whether it be through trail cams or moving right back next door. He's kept a close eye on that area, and I don't think anybody can argue that point. He's always right in the mix of everything.
Yeah, it didn't surprise me when they said it. Only because, I mean, how many hours upon hours upon hours all of us viewers invested in all this. And, you know, you just look at it, and I just noticed that there was almost a map. He almost gave a map, but it's different. He just didn't want you to, you know, search there. And and then not only that, but his statements have been inconsistent since the very beginning, even in the affidavit. It's like, well, wait a minute. Barry Morphew said this. This is what he said this time. This is what he said. This has changed. It's changed multiple times. So I don't know. I just hope she's found.
Yeah,
She
I
has to be
pray
found.
every single day that
Me
she is
too.
found ever since hearing what happened. Linda, someone's asking tell us more about the death threat you received.
Not going to give details. I will say that it's not been just one. Very interesting in this case, and maybe Lauren or Tyson, Sarah, anybody can piggyback on this, but I found that okay, let's take Chad and Lori Daybell case. Okay, I've done, I think, almost 200 videos on that. I have not received the same type of threats that I have in this case. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I had backed off for a while. So I can only imagine if I'm getting it. I'm sure that you guys are also receiving stuff on the back end, and we have to grin and bear it and keep going through it.
Yep.
Sarah knows, what I've been through. So it's like no other case I've ever covered.
Agreed.
None. And I've covered a lot of missing person cases. The social media, just how much it attracted so many people from all over the country and the world. And they all wanted, even if it was just the slightest little update, they wanted to know about it. And Sarah, did you want to say anything about your experience covering this?
Well, I was just going to say it's not even people, being so invested in the case that they're attacking you for your reporting or this, things that you're saying on air, but it's even people that are going through your personal social media. And I mean, you got married in November. There were people threatening your wedding and different things like that. So it wasn't even just what you were talking about in regards to the case. It was you personally. And I was just shocked that people took it that far to think that, you're doing this for a personal reason or you're doing this as a vendetta or anything like that. You're just simply reporting the facts of the case. And that was one of the things that stood out to me when Eton kind of attacked you for that.
Yeah, I wanted to tell her I'm just doing my job. I was just doing my job, and I gave your client time to give his side.
Well, and that was one of the things too, was you've done a lot more coverage of this and obviously talked to neighbors and, people in the community a lot more than some of the other local stations around here. But this was something I noticed, was that a lot of the interviews you did were fairly early on, into our reporting of this case. And even then, people already had opinions about Barry and just what could have happened to Suzanne based off of what they knew about them as a couple or what they knew about them individually as people. So it wasn't like you were persuading anybody or trying to put your opinion on anybody. These people already had their opinions based off of what they had experienced, and you were just telling their story.
And I would like to say, the very first 2 interviews that I did were family members of Barry Morphew as well as friends of Barry Morphew that stood up for Barry Morphew as well as Suzanne and them as a couple, and said that they were a perfect couple. And I honestly was just doing the story to raise awareness about Suzanne and that she was missing. And that's why I did what I did. Let me get to another question.
Jason, are you going to speak to that? Any of
Well,
your experience?
Yeah, you had to even shut down your YouTube page at one point, right?
yeah, in the very beginning I did, because, of course I lied to Barry and told him the camera was off, and, it would have been so easy for me to delete that from that video and not ever show that, but I left it on there, and it created a lot of drama, as you guys know, and a lot of problems for me. Right from the very beginning, I was driving back from talking to Barry, and I think I mentioned it to you, Lauren, but shortly thereafter on my YouTube page, I had 4,000 messages, and the majority of them were people that were very upset with me, and I wouldn't say that there was like anybody that said they were going to kill me, like any death threats, but they were getting pretty close, man. We had some really angry people. You know, and I don't have any idea who they were. I don't have Facebook. I haven't through this whole process. And so I've tried to, you know, have a very low profile. And so, you know, people just don't really know how to get a hold of me anymore and have kind of left me alone. But yeah, there in the very beginning, it was kind of touch and go there for a while.
It's crazy. It really is. It's nothing like the only other case I could say would be similar in reactions would be the CW case from Colorado. I won't even say his name.
Chris.
Yeah. But
Chris Watts, I'll say it.
other than that, yeah, it's just amazing. And even just reviewing my videos, going back, going, how bad is it? People are just freaking out. And then I review it 6 months later going, this is nothing.
I didn't
It's
know that
so
the crime
minor.
community was just so much and so many, and they're so passionate about it. And I just did not know that at all.
Yeah. Well, you know, unfortunately, Barry has a lot of supporters. You know, he's got a lot of people fooled. I mean, he's a classic professional narcissist, you know, and he's got a lot of people fooled, and he's got a lot of people in his corner. And I think now that the charges have been temporarily dropped, that following is going to grow a little more. But, you know, I mean, it's obvious. And
Well, Tyson, you got to say, I mean, he's innocent right now. He is. The case never went to a trial, and it never, you know, there was no conviction. So you got to remember, he's an innocent man. He can go about what he wants to do, where he wants to go. And there's been some questions as far as where do you guys think he is going to go?
Yeah, he is. I mean, I say that like, you know, because that's my opinion, Lauren, and I'm not, you know, and I'm free to
and everyone they can have their opinion.
Yeah, and I believe that he did this, and it sounded like the entire panel that we had tonight would agree with that. I think he's.
I would like to say I did ask some friends of his if they would like to join.
Yeah, well, I think he's gonna, to answer that second part of that question, I think he's gonna hang around Maysville because, you know, like we were saying, Linda, he wants to watch over that spot like a mother hen.
I say the same thing. Like, even after death, he wants eyes on her.
Yeah. So
that's how I feel, in my opinion. Yes, he is innocent in the court of law until proven guilty. And well, right now he's innocent. But Suzanne's going to be found, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's going to be interesting.
And you got to remember, he also has other charges. There's the attempt to influence a public servant, and then the voter charge as well, trying to vote for Suzanne Morphew as well, trying to vote in the presidential election for Trump. Yeah. You got to remember that. So like I saw on the Chaffee County docket that on May 26th at 8:30 in the morning, he's supposed to be on, WebEx with Judge Murphy on those charges.
Well, and that's a good point, Lauren, because if he's convicted on any of those charges, and it sounds like he will be, especially on the voter fraud, he's going to be on probation in Chaffee County, which means most of the time that you can't leave that county. So he's probably going to end up staying right there, so.
That's good.
Absolutely.
Did you notice I wore my animal print tonight? I was paying homage to the chipmunks, the raccoons, the mountain lion, the
I like
turkey.
it. I thought you were trying to go with the Carol Baskin. This one lady is asking about Shoshona, I think. That's a good question. Her case got dismissed when she trespassed on the Morphew property. I don't exactly remember the month when that happened. And according to the arrest affidavit, she never admitted that they were, an item, but, investigators had surveillance video of Barry Morphew staying at her house. And then they had also surveillance video of, I think it was even Valentine's weekend, where they went to Colorado Springs at the Antlers Hotel. And, you see him walking into the lobby, and he's holding flowers or she's holding flowers and he's holding the luggage. It is interesting. I never saw Shoshona in the courtroom supporting Barry Morphew, so it is interesting as to where she is.
Good
Do you
question.
think, though, that that might have been requested not to?
By his defense counsel? Possibility for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to remember, both daughters were there every single day, sitting right behind him. You know, you would think that when I talked to Shoshona, she said that she was just really close friends with him. And you would think, you know, you would want anyone that lives near there to be supportive and be in the courtroom supporting you.
Yeah, I think if I was the defense attorney and I was, Lord forbid, but if I was, you know, back in Barry, I would say, this is about your wife. You're not bringing in any, you know,
Yeah.
girlfriends or whatever.
Yeah.
That's how I would approach it. It's like, no.
Yeah, that would be a bad look, having your girlfriend show up.
I think so, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree.
Kind of
I
like
agree
Chad
there.
Daybell and his red tie. Don't wear red tie to a murder trial that you're, you know, you're.
Who did this?
Chad Daybell wears red tie, and every time I just cringe.
Oh,
going,
well, no,
"What
I
are you
thought he
doing?"
just wore a blue one.
He did just now, but in the preliminary, he wore the red. He likes to wear his red tie. I was like, oh, wear it
Could
to
be just his
trial.
favorite
Chad.
color. I'm wearing red.
Yeah,
What
it's
does that
different
mean?
though. You're not on trial for murder, Lauren. It's a little different. I love red, just not on, you know. But hey, if he wants to do that, no problem. Wear red, Chad.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a whole different animal, though. He knows he knows he has no chance, so he can wear whatever he wants.
Well, I just, you know, when I look and some people go, what does that matter? But, you know,
Mhm.
when you're being tried for murder, it's not great.
Yeah.
And with these high profile cases, people are going to pick apart every little thing that you're wearing, your actions. I mean, even your mannerisms, walking in and out of the courtroom, at least with the Barry Morphew case, that's kind of what happened. And it's sad because those daughters, they don't deserve this. And, you know, I don't think, I don't know. I always just try to think, like, if I were in those shoes, I don't know if I would want to be in front of the camera if my dad was up and in the courtroom and charged with something like this. It's like, yes, you support them, but you can support them at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be his choice. I think his choice would be to have his girls by his side, whether it's their choice or not. In my opinion, I think that's. I mean, not saying that they're forced to. I'm just saying, I think when it comes to Barry, that
Well,
regardless,
even
those
Barry
girls will
told me,
be
he
there.
says their family likes to not quiet, but they're what is the word I'm looking for? They like their privacy. They're a family that like their privacy. And so for him to say that to me initially, and that was 3 months after Suzanne went missing, when I first was, you know, writing letters to him and calling him and text messaging him. He said, you know, we are a family that want our privacy. But then when this whole court proceeding happened for nearly a year, the daughters are being, you know, subjected to publicity every single time he's in the courtroom or has, you know, court proceedings.
I think he said the same thing in Tyson's video too. He said, you know, I like to keep things private. I can't remember. He said something. We just like to keep low key or something like that. And I have a question, Lauren. There's in one of your interviews with Barry, you said, I can hear you say, it's like, put it on record, Barry, right now. If you, and then, right? That one. What happened right before? Because I'm sure there was some editing. Was there something that happened right before that he said that got you to, not that you were angry, it just sounded like you were a little riled up, like, okay, put it on record right now, Barry. And he just said, absolutely not.
Well, throughout our conversation, he kept kind of changing the subject. And I kept I'm like, I want to know what happened that weekend. I want to know what was the last thing you said to your wife. And, you know, I'm not here to talk about other family members or
Yes.
other coworkers and your theories of other, you know, coworkers. I was just saying, put it on record, Barry, you know, what do you think happened? Or
Yes.
I don't know exactly what the question I said, but throughout my talk with him, I kept saying, you know, he kept telling me, okay, next time you come to Salida, I'll do this on camera. But I said, let's just do it on Zoom right now because of COVID at the time. I was like, we could just do it on Zoom. And there was times where I wanted to ask, you know, like he would say something about someone in particular, and I said, I can join the call with that person and I can have them on the conversation as well, and let's just sit down and talk about this as a group. And he would just, it was just like a constant changing of the discussion, and I was just like, let's get back to the point, like about your missing wife. Does that make sense? Is kind of
yeah, totally. Yeah.
Hey, Lauren, I hate to butt in here, but my phone's gonna die, so
okay,
that's why I keep cutting in and out. And I just wanted to say, I just wanted to tell you all thank you for letting me be here tonight, and it was good seeing all you guys.
good to see you and talk to you, Tyson. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
You bet. We'll be in touch, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Well, I was just, you know, I hope one day that maybe I can share the entire interview with people, because it is such a long interview. And, you know, my station, I hope one day will release it. I'm not exactly sure.
That'd be great.
Well, Sarah, you heard some bits and pieces that haven't been released. Is there anything you wanted to chime in there?
Yes, but I don't really know how to phrase it. It was just very interesting hearing, because obviously, like we talked about earlier, you know, initially he just put out the 25-second plea, which didn't say a whole lot other than, you know, I love you, I miss you, we're looking for you. So it was really interesting just to hear the way that he talked about Suzanne. And the thing that stood out to me the most was that, again, you know, this wasn't too long after she went missing, but he immediately already talked about her in the past tense, which I think was the biggest thing that stood out to me, was that if you genuinely thought she was still alive or thought she was still out there somewhere, that you wouldn't be talking about her as if she was already gone. And so that was one of the bigger things for me. But then even like you said, you know, at the beginning of the conversation,
he was
said
kind of flip-floppy. He would say,
yeah.
I mean, he would say past tense and then present tense when he was referring to Suzanne.
But even just changing some of his answers, you know, you would bring up something at the beginning of the conversation and he would say, oh, this happened or we did this. And then if it got brought up again, you know, 30 minutes later into the conversation, it was kind of a different answer. So that part stood out as well, that, you know, his answers and his time frames and different things like that weren't too consistent, considering it wasn't that much longer after she had gone missing. So you think that would be a little bit more fresh in his head. So those were kind of the two biggest things that stood out to me.
When Sarah and I went to Salida and spoke with Jeff Puckett, after we did that interview with Jeff Puckett, but even before I spoke with Morgan Gentile, we went to Barry Morphew's home specifically to talk to him about what Jeff Puckett had told us, to confirm or to kind of get his side of what happened that weekend. Yeah. And when we went to, you know, Barry Morphew's condo at the time in Poncha Springs, the daughter was kind of sent out, even though I was in communication texting him. It was like a few minutes after I said, hey, I'm outside. I don't want to, you know, talk to your daughter. I don't want to alarm your daughter, because previously that same day I had gone to the home and one of the daughters answered, spoke with her briefly. I was upfront with Barry Morphew and told him, hey, I did speak to your daughter. I was looking for you, but, you know, she answered the door. And he again said, you know, please don't talk to them. I don't want them involved in this. And I said, okay. And then came back later when he, you know, was at home. I saw that his truck was there. And that's when it was like, as soon as I texted him saying we were outside, it was like he sent out his daughter. At least that's what it seemed to me and Sarah. We were in the car. We weren't even out of the car. We were parked on the side of the road. And it was just, I just could not believe that he knew that I was out there. He knew I wanted to talk to him. He didn't know why I wanted to talk to him. And then finally, when one of the daughters said, okay, I'll go get him if you really say you're talking to him. I said, great, perfect. When he came out there, it was just, I don't know how you can describe it, Sarah.
It felt like he was almost blaming us for approaching his daughter when it was kind of the other way around. Like, she obviously saw us out there and came up to us and said, you guys need to leave. But it was just odd because he knew we were out there. And if the whole point was to not bring his daughter in it, why did you let her come outside anyways? And then when he came outside, it was like, look what you're doing to her. And it's like, well, we don't even want to talk to her. We have no interest in talking to her at all. We wanted to talk to you
right now, Lauren. And I said, I never wanted to talk. I wanted to talk to you, Barry. Is it exactly what I said? I said, I didn't want to talk to her. I wanted to talk to you, kind of a thing. And then
it was very odd.
And then the daughter got upset. That was never my intention. And then the next day is when he called me back, and I had just gotten off the phone with doing a Zoom interview with Andy Mormon.
Yeah.
And so some things that Barry Morphew had told me in that face-to-face conversation, he had said that, Andy Mormon was doing this as a publicity stunt, the search. And so I kind of went back to Andy Mormon and said, are you doing this as a publicity stunt? Why are you doing this? And then Barry Morphew had also mentioned something that the family of Suzanne's hadn't seen her in years. And then I said, Andy, when was the last time you saw Suzanne? And when was the last time your dad or any of your brother or sister ever saw Suzanne? And he said, Christmas time I saw. So it was just interesting to get both sides. And then finally hearing from Andy, and then finally after that hearing from Barry. It was just interesting. That was a crazy day in my career for sure.
And then it took some time, wasn't it, before he actually did that interview of the put it on record. So how many times I've watched that interview. That took some time before you actually got to do that with him, right? I believe.
Yeah, I had spoken to him weeks, I believe, before. And at first I talked to him briefly. It sounded like he was at a job or something. And so he only spoke to me for like 4 minutes. And previously I had sent him a couple of notes at the house, kind of giving him the questions that I would ask him to answer.
I remember that. Yeah.
And it was like very simple questions like, tell me about Suzanne and your marriage and, how much she means to you and how scary this was that, she went missing on Mother's Day. And he never, texted or called me back then. And then I just decided, hey, I'm going to try once more. This is around the time, I think I always tried to do a lot of Morphew updates when the anniversary came up or when he got new information from the sheriff's office and things like that. And so it was one of the anniversaries where I really pushed hard. I think Sarah and I on a weekend went to Salida and we talked to a lot of people, including the Poncha Springs Market. I think Poncha Market, I think is what it's called.
Right.
We spoke to, we tried to talk to George Davis that time. And then some other people in the we spoke to the Ritters too. And so it was like we were getting bits and pieces of information and we tried again to talk to the sheriff. And so that's kind of, I think he realized we're not stopping. We're going to keep, picking and digging and trying to get some answers and just continue to bring awareness to Suzanne. And I think, he finally did talk to us and he's, at first was just 4 minutes. And then again, he said, we're a private family. We like our privacy. And I said, but Barry, it's been 3 months, and I want to help you find your wife. And so that's kind of when he gave me some back history of the families, which was helpful because when he doesn't talk, some of the Morphews weren't talking, then I was only getting one side, and I don't want
Right.
that. I always want to have both
Both.
sides. And so it was nice to finally hear that he was willing and wanting to give me some information.
Yeah, that's good. I think about when you said the 3-month mark, I immediately go to the timeline with the affidavit. And that was the time around where there was buzz about Shoshona. But it said two things in the affidavit: that there was talk that they actually got together in July, which would be that 3-month mark, but others are saying it's October. Barry said it was end of October, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I even knew about Shoshona until, I want to say, January.
Yeah, it's starting to
or
come
December, January time frame. And so, but again, I mean, you kind of look back and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been nearly 2 years. It's like crazy. And to see the timeline and to see the progression of the case, it's shocking to me that, you know, it's gone to a dismissal. And, you know, it's also shocking that they still haven't found her body. You know, it's been so long. You think.
I think it's a blessing in disguise, though. I really do. I think that maybe they were hoping to find Suzanne before the trial. They need a little bit more time, especially with the weather. So I think this is a blessing in disguise. I don't know. I really, really hope they find her. You did an excellent job too, by the way, on the Broomfield. You were bringing the info like crazy. I just remembered that right now. Info
the
like crazy.
I mean, that was always the biggest question marks that I had early in this case was, why was the family not with her? It's Mother's Day. And to hear her story about cancer and that the doctor said it wasn't likely that she would be able to have kids, and to look back at her social media accounts, and she was always posting pictures of, you know, her and her daughters on Mother's Day.
Yes.
It didn't click with me, because I am very close with my mom, and I remember exactly what I was doing that Mother's Day. We were painting pottery at the house because it was COVID. And so it was just, I just could not believe that no one was with her. And
sorry, Lauren.
So that's why I wanted to look into the Broomfield like alibi, you could say.
Yeah,
that's where he was. And so that's kind of what led me. And to have that was after Morgan Gentile's interview. So I had bits and pieces from Morgan Gentle, Jeffrey Puckett, and even Cassidy Cordova as to where exactly was this Broomfield wall that he was supposedly working on. And it's crazy because my grandmother lived 2 minutes from there. And so I was very, very familiar with that area, like the men's warehouse, the McDonald's, the car wash, the hotel. I'm very, very, very familiar with that area.
Yeah. Well, and what was I going to say? I just lost it. You're talking the Broomfield, the area, and I just lost it.
Well, when I found out exactly that, you know, with the city of Broomfield, you cannot work on a holiday.
Yeah, on a Sunday.
On a Sunday, I was just like, and then to talk with one of the contractors that hired Barry Morphew, and that he had gone through training and he should have known that he wasn't supposed to work.
Right. But wasn't there also the firefighter? There was something that he said he was on firefighter training in the beginning. We were hearing that.
Yeah, I believe someone that he had, I think it was like a Walmart employee, or I'm not exactly sure what store it was. But when they were like, I think checking him out that weekend, that Saturday, I think she just made small talk with him and was like, you know, what plans do you have this Mother's Day or whatever? And I think he said, oh, I've got to be, I'm a firefighter, a volunteer firefighter, and I have something to do with that or something.
I gotcha. One of the things I was going to say is my husband is a paramedic. And so when it comes to Mother's Day, Sometimes we have to celebrate it on a different day.
Mm.
With, you know, with my kids or whatever, we do it all as family because he's a firefighter or because he's a paramedic. So I was thinking of Barry and being a firefighter. And before we knew anything, I was like, well, what if they were going to celebrate later that night or the next day? That was my first thought because, you know, I'm used to that in certain things. Sometimes we don't get Christmas together and we actually celebrate it on Boxing Day or whatever because of the shift work. But yeah,
and talking to his family and friends, they all said he is a really, really hard worker. And so it made sense, you know, hey, I have this job. I've got to do it. Let's celebrate another day, or let's celebrate when I get back. And especially if the girls were on a camping trip, that made more sense, you know, to kind of celebrate it later. But when I found out that the Broomfield job shouldn't have happened that day, you know.
Red flag. And so do you know much about or have you covered these trees that were purchased?
By Barry or by?
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm curious about it.
Are they for the Morphew home, or where are they supposed to be planted?
I don't know. I think they're planted in a couple different places.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, so we'll have to talk offline, maybe.
Yeah.
I'll fill you in on a couple things. I don't know.
Okay.
But the buzz is that there's trees, that he purchased trees, and there's a, what do you call it? An invoice for these trees. So I've been kind of snoopy and trying to figure out where these trees are.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe one of them is we're up the mountain. I don't know.
Sarah, is there anything that you wanted to talk about?
I've currently just had my mic muted because my dogs are thinking my living room's WrestleMania currently. But kind of going back to when you were talking about the weekend that we went up there, initially we were, I hadn't been there yet. I had gone for other reasons, but I hadn't been by the house yet. I'd gone to the Vigil and different things like that. But you took me by where they found the bike, and there was a woman with brown hair, same build as Suzanne, everything.
She even had a blue bike, I remember.
She had a blue bike and a blue helmet and was wearing biking gear. And it was so odd because that's the only way that Barry described her in the beginning. When he went to Poncha Market, you know, she said, what does your wife look like? Write it down. So, you know, if we see her in the security cameras, whatever. And that was the only thing he gave, was that she had a blue bike, a blue helmet, and was wearing biking clothes.
And no descriptors.
And we asked that lady, I remember we asked that lady, and I said, hey, did you know that you're biking near where a woman just went missing? And she goes, what? And then she knew what case we were talking about, but she didn't know the area where it was. And she was alone. I remember she was biking alone because she had separated from the group that she was in. And I believe we did an interview with her.
We did, yeah. It was just really interesting that, you know,
she's from Denver, and she didn't even know that was the area.
Yeah, it was just so odd that she like perfectly matched the description. And if you had never seen Suzanne's face, based off of that little description Barry had given, you could have easily thought that was her and, you know, called it in. It was just so odd that we saw her looking the way she did in that exact spot, and that just always stuck with me as just being so
haunting.
Yeah,
and that was the other thing that stuck out, because there was never descriptors of Suzanne.
Even on the missing flyer posters and stuff, there was no description, not her height, hair color, weird. Nothing.
Never.
Even the sheriff's office press release, the initial press release, which was more than 24 hours behind of when she was first reported missing, there was not a height, weight,
nothing.
Color of hair, color of eyes.
That's what just struck me. I thought, that's so weird.
Yeah.
That was just so weird.
And there wasn't even a picture when they sent that press release. I think it was the next day. I just remember, you know, getting that press release after 9 p.m. On the Monday. And that was way after, you know, Suzanne went missing. And I'm just like, just everything. Why is the neighbor reporting her missing?
Right.
Why wasn't the family at the home or near the home when she first went missing.
And even the security cameras at the hotel, once Barry had gotten the call from the Ritters that she was missing, it took him a whole hour to actually leave his hotel room after finding out that that's what was going on.
I did a timeline on that, and the time that through the night, through the day in Broomfield, and the guesstimation of sleeping, because you'd be tired of staying up after over 24 hours. And yeah, that's all some sketchy stuff.
I remember when we like went to Poncha Market and we talked to the lady, and she said, you know, he had come in kind of, or not, he hadn't come in because they were closed.
They were closed.
Yeah. And I guess one of the clerks, which was a teenage boy, noticed he was rummaging in the trash outside and went out there and was like, what's going on? You know, and he said, I'm looking for my wife. You know, this is the description of like, and I had the piece of paper, like she sent me the picture of the receipt. On the back of it, he wrote down like the helmet and
baby blue. Yeah.
It's interesting for sure.
It was kind of funny. Like there's so much footage I've watched of you. It's so funny when you're saying it now. It's just like it's all coming together, but I've never met you really, you know, like it's so weird because I remember that. Lauren said this, Lauren said that. It's kind of surreal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I did want to give you a heads up, Lauren. My laptop is about to die, so I might have to get off channel a little bit.
Yeah. Someone's asking, wasn't there another person seen riding a bike that they had a wig on and it might have been a man looking like a woman? I do remember someone sending me pictures. This is when Andy Warman had that huge search with like 300 people. There was someone on like an electric bike that was seen. It looked like wearing a wig and a baseball cap. I was
and glasses too, wasn't it? Was it sunglasses or?
Yeah, I think so. Sarah, you were out there for the search. Did you ever see that?
No, unfortunately, I didn't get to go in the morning, so we just kind of caught the tail end of it leading into the vigil.
I really hope the investigators, you know, question that person, what they were doing and why they were dressed up and everything like that.
Weird. It's like a BMX bike too or something, if I remember.
Yeah, I thought it was like an electric bike. Yeah,
maybe.
It was like a camo bike or something like that.
Yeah. That's funny.
Someone's asking about the kiss that
Jeremy. Hello, Jeremy.
Iris Eaton did. That was interesting.
Yeah, there was a little moment.
Let me see if there's any other questions. I am curious as to what happened to Trevor Knoll. And then, you know, why did he was so gung-ho about the Facebook page to get information, get updates.
It was that video.
I remember him specifically wanting me to ask about the bike. But this was before we knew that the bike was found. But the family was the one that kind of told us that the bike had been found the same day. But the sheriff's office did not release that.
No.
But they wanted us, Trevor Knoll really wanted us to ask the sheriff's office about the bike. And so I thought that was, yeah, I remember that too. It's like, you got to remember 2 years ago, what happened? It's
so much
time has passed.
So much, in the timeline. But that was the biggest thing for me was the Facebook page went up, but that video was also recorded. And after that video was recorded and put out, it was radio silence from Trevor Knoll.
Yeah. You're talking about Barry Morphew's plea.
Yeah, it's 25-second. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was missing and my husband did that 25-second plea, I better not come home.
You'd be pretty pissed, huh?
He would no longer be my husband.
Oh.
That's just how I feel. 25 seconds plea video. Okay. No search, no vigil. Having a girlfriend after 3 months. I don't know. For me, in my opinion,
you can tell the video is pre-rehearsed. It was, you know, I wanted to know,
Okay.
like, how many times did it take to do that?
I
How many
said that
takes
too.
did it take?
I will-
And Sarah and I have actually been to that spot where he did the video, which was at the Ritters behind their house in front of the creek, in between the Morphews and the and there's like a picnic table there, and you could tell that's kind of where the area he did it. And according to some of the people that were at the search and was there, you know, when he did the video. So
I did do a video on that. I won't speak too much on it on here, but I did do a video on his plea video. And he has a little pattern. So maybe, you know, if people want to check that out, they can check that out. That one got people riled up, but I still stick to it.
I know that one of some of my viewers, the last video I did, they were asking me, like, why is it that, you know, Suzanne's affair was so salacious and the media kind of took it and led with it. But then, you know, this information about Suzanne, you know, or not Suzanne, Barry Morphew having this girlfriend, like a couple months after Suzanne went missing, allegedly, you know, why wasn't that more so in the headlines versus,
I've been complaining the same thing. And there is some disturbing things in that affidavit that no one's talking about on these specials and stuff, right? Ashley Madison, the search.
Oh, the search records, Barry Morphew
Celebrity Jihad, right? And the 14-year-old grade 9er doing some unsavory things. I don't know. I don't want to say it on here, right? You don't want to get flagged. But, you know.
Remember, Sarah, we were in the courtroom when this was brought up and how the defense attorneys acted, and even the daughters and Barry kind of, we at the time we were all still wearing our masks, but you could tell it sparked a fire underneath their butts, and they were upset and they objected and they didn't want it to be brought up in the prelim. So,
and this is important though. I mean, that was only 3 days worth of searching. What else is he searching for? That's my concern. Is there's a search for a 14-year-old doing a certain type of act, and he's searching for that. So that is of major concern to me, to many other people. That wasn't brought up, and now he's free. So yes, he's innocent, but I can see those searches. And I don't know about you, but for me, if I had a 14-year-old daughter.
Another thing that I think struck odd to a lot of people was the selling off of many things. I mean, talking about, you know, Suzanne's Range Rover and the house. You know, if Barry Morphew and the daughters thought, you know, that she was coming home, where would she have gone home to if someone else was living in that home? Or, you know, her vehicle. I mean, I think one of the Indiana people that know the family that took the Range Rover or whatever, her bought the Range Rover from the Morphews. They said, you know, if Suzanne were to come home, they would give the Range Rover back. But it's just even less than a month after Suzanne went missing, he's going to Indiana and requesting guardianship.
Right.
And that was, I remember when I talked to Gene Mormon, Suzanne's dad, and their side of the family, Andy Mormon, that was one of the big red flags that they were upset about and wondering, why did Barry Morphew do this?
Yeah.
And obviously that was so that they could sell their house in Indiana, which they still needed that money to then, you know, give back money to Gene and to pay off the Morphew home in, you know, Maysville in Colorado. But it just really struck them the wrong way, the Mormons, at least, when I talked to them.
Yeah.
I hate to cut in, but my laptop's about to die, so I just wanted to say goodbye.
Bye, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye, Sarah.
I mean, that was something that really bothered a lot of people. That,
Yeah.
you know, so soon after your wife goes missing, like, why file for guardianship so soon?
Yeah, and why not go on the search? Why are you standing on the property with your gun instead of going on the search with your brother-in-law of 20 some years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was, and when I talked to Barry, you know, he kind of acted, well, I haven't been invited. It's like, do you really need to be invited to search for your
True,
wife,
right?
even though you tell me you're searching for over 100 days and every single day, and you promised your daughters you would search, every single day. It's like, well, I'm inviting you. I was like, I'll invite you if you haven't heard from
Come
Andy.
on.
And it's like, if there's a strife between you and Andy, you guys don't have to search together. You can search miles apart, even, because it's such a big
it's
area.
vast. Absolutely. Go take that area. You go take that area.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Let's take just a couple more questions. I know it's probably really late for you. Let me see if there's any questions. Someone's asking if I ever spoke with Troy Skinner. Yes, one of my first interviews that I did on the Morphew case, I think it was maybe the 1 month or 2 month anniversary of Suzanne's disappearance. I interviewed one of Barry's uncles, and he has since passed. And then I also interviewed Troy Skinner, which is one of Barry Morphew's longtime friends. He's been to the courthouse during the preliminary hearing. So I did speak, and you can go back on Fox 21 News to watch that interview with Troy Skinner. Speculation that the person riding the electric bike was wearing a cap that Trevor Noel was seen wearing. I have not heard that at all. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have heard that a lot of people think that that's who it is.
Yeah, you probably hear a lot more on social media. I try to stay off of social media and just talk to locals and people that are really close to the case, like family or friends. So I'm not, I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, there's been that. There's some people too. They send the email from in town or whatever, and give their thoughts.
Yeah, people are talking about the Madison.
Ashley Madison.
Yeah, the Ashley Madison thing.
Yeah.
Oh, Lori Dunn says Suzanne had beauty inside and out. She was so good to everyone who knew her. She gave back to women in need and was a faithful believer in God. Also a normal woman with life struggles and pain. Yeah, that's what everyone that I spoke to, as far as friends, both family from both the Morphews and the Mormons, they said, Suzanne had a heart of gold. Yep. She would give, the shirt off her back to people. She was a strong, faithful woman. She did everything and anything for her daughters. And to hear that she went missing, a lot of people in Indiana, Colorado were just shocked. And I've even built some friendships with some of Suzanne's friends, and to just know and to know and talk to them, I can see how friendly Suzanne would have been. I wish I could have met Suzanne, because even speaking to Suzanne's sister, Melinda, she is just so sweet. And she's so hopeful that they're gonna find Suzanne. And she has full trust in investigators, and she's like, in God's time is kind of what she told me.
Yes. And I think too, by them putting that in the motion, I was surprised it was in there, that they would tip anything.
Yeah, I was like, why are you showing your cards if that's, I mean, not even to Barry Morphew and Barry Morphew's defense, but
just
to
in general,
whoever, to any suspect that might know.
I was surprised.
To Suzanne, it's like, oh, they.
I wasn't surprised the area, but I was surprised that they kind of put that in there. It's like, okay, so maybe they are really close. Maybe they're closer than we even think in that.
I do want to say thank you, Teresa. I know she is a friend of Suzanne's from Florida, that she made some bracelets, justice bands for Suzanne and her followers of this case. And she sent them far and wide. And I do want to thank Teresa for that. Someone saying about Mike McDonough knows about the trees. Linda, I think when we were talking about the trees.
Are you talking about Chris McDonough?
Oh, yes. They said Mike, but I think that's what they were saying.
Yeah, I'm curious about the spots.
Oh.
The spots on there
Um,
of where they are.
have you watched the 48 hours and the 2020 special? And
Yeah, I've done videos on them. So a lot of people didn't can't get it. So a lot of my viewers, so I watch it and then I review it and then I post it up there and do the recap.
yeah.
So I've done both. And Troy Skinner was on one of them.
Okay.
He was on there, and that was, wouldn't say recent, but within the last few months, I want to say. Yep. So I've watched it and I've covered it. That's where it irks me a little bit, and a lot of people, about how they bring so much attention to Suzanne's affair, yet there's, from Barry's side, there was issues too, but that's never brought up.
I was so looking forward to listening to Jeff Libler on the stand, when it was going to go to trial. That was one of the days I was really looking forward to. And then also hearing from Sheila Oliver, one of her closest and best friends from college. Those were the 2 days that I was really looking forward to hearing and understanding their friendship, as well as the relationship, that they had. Another question is, why was so much of the evidence not allowed to be used? So during the court proceedings, you have to hand over the discovery in a timely manner, and the prosecution got docked because they didn't follow the directions of the court. And a lot of the expert witnesses, they didn't file CVs, which is kind of like resumes. And so because of that, they got dinged pretty much from including those expert witnesses as experts. They could still, some of them, testify, but just not as experts. And so
that makes it tough.
It's like they shot themselves in the foot, kind of. And I think, Iris Eaton even mentioned this in her press conference, was that there was over 4,000 terabytes of discovery. And so it was just like, you got to remember that the Chaffee County and the 11th Judicial District, it's a small, it's not, it's a small area, but they're not like the Denver area or Boulder, that are bigger cities that deal with a lot of murder cases.
Yeah.
So it's just like, they only had one secretary at one point. Even when I would make requests for court documents, it would take multiple days to get them. And it's not any fault of theirs. It's just, they only have what manpower they have.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. Anything else? Someone's asking about the chipmunks.
Oh, Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth.
That was a good, that's a great question. Where are the chipmunks? When I was out there, like the 5 or 6 times, I would see birds and when I was driving up, sometimes I would see deer and everything. Maybe I saw one chipmunk, but it wasn't like something I, thought, oh, wow, there's a lot of chipmunks in this area. You know what I mean?
I was looking up, I was trying to find out some things about the chipmunks, and there was like 5 or 6 types of chipmunks in Colorado. I thought that was weird. It was like, it was a different kind of, different kinds. But
and you would think if they were being that big of a pest, that there's other remedies to like get rid of them, like, I don't know, an animal, like a dog, a pet, maybe.
I don't know. That was really weird to me. But I was trying to see, because I'm sure you know that before Barry moved out to Salida, he buried his furniture in the yard.
I heard that, but I can't.
It's in the affidavit. Yeah, it's in the affidavit. So what he did was he buried furniture, among other things, in his yard and covered it with alfalfa. And then did
they dig it up? Did they like see what type of things
I don't think they did, but I wish they would have, because that would have been interesting. And the friends of Barry said that he has actually buried money before as well. So it got me on this little path of checking the chipmunks and looking into these trees and wondering, was there alfalfa also, what do you call it, planted?
Mm.
Because it grows really fast, alfalfa, right?
Mhm.
So, but it's very interesting. You have to have right conditions as well, or it's not going to do anything. So yeah, I was just kind of researching all these things, trying to figure out, oh,
I
you know,
feel so bad for the people who live in the Morphew home now, because it's like, I'm sure they get calls or like weird visitors wanting to check out the property or come into the home, or even probably investigators that keep bugging them. And I'm not sure. At one time, I thought they said that it was an Airbnb, but I don't think.
yeah,
But I think now it's just like a vacation home among a family or something like that. But I know, and right now I know that they have a fence, like I think the housing community built a fence, which I've been told that Barry helped with to build those fences. When I was there, when Nancy Grace came out for the vigil around that area, the fence was shut and people couldn't go around that area at all. But you can take the road up to Foose's Creek. And people have asked me, I did speak to a house cleaner. It was not the house cleaner that people thought was dating Barry Morphew. It was a different house cleaner who was cleaning an Airbnb right near there. It was actually on this hill, and you could straight and see the Morphew home from it. And she said that she had even seen Barry and Suzanne Wednesday walking, she said, up the hill from their home, and she was putting trash from, it was COVID, so they had to clean out all the Airbnb homes, and so she had piles and piles of trash, and it's a community trash, trash.
oh yeah, like a bin.
Community like dump
Bin,
trash,
yeah.
Trash bin, yeah. And so she was just putting it in there, and Barry Morphew asked her something like, according to her, he was asking her like, what are you doing? Who are you, kind of a thing, as Suzanne and Barry were walking up the street or whatever. But that, again, was not Shoshone Darky that some people asked me about.
Interesting.
Someone is asking, did the unspent shell casing have DNA on it? I don't think it did, but I'm not sure.
I don't remember that either.
I don't remember that.
I don't even know, did they address that? Did they address it?
Not that I remember in the courtroom. I don't remember that.
I don't remember either.
And
I
again,
don't recall, as Barry says.
I do remember they did mention that it was on Suzanne's side of the bed.
Yes.
The unspent shell casing was
That's
on
right.
the side of the bed.
That's right.
Let's do one more question. I know it's getting late there too, so. And if you have a question for me, Linda, please.
Not at this time. I'm sure I will have lots after, once I start thinking about everything.
Right. Well, you now have my email, and
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I can shoot you my phone number too. I do want to remind everyone that, Suzanne's birthday is April 30th. That is in a couple days. I want people to think about her. If you pray for her and her family, pray for Barry, pray for the girls, because they have been through a lot these last 2 years. And remember, she would have been 51 years old. Last year we celebrated her 50th birthday, doing like a balloon release. And then after that, just a few days later, is the anniversary of her disappearance on May 10th. And that was at the time Mother's Day. Now I think, is May 8th the Mother's Day this year?
I don't even know.
I think it is.
Maybe the 8th.
I should know.
I haven't looked that far forward yet.
Right.
I'll look on May 1st.
I don't even know. Do you have kids?
I do. I have 2 kids.
Oh, well, happy Mother's Day. Early Mother's Day.
Thank you. Yes, I have a 19-year-old and a 7-year-old. So
Okay, one person's asking, what about Linda Stanley going on Mike's channel? Yeah, that was brought up in the courtroom. The judge at the time did not like the name of Mike's channel. That was a big issue for him. He also, kind of said if she's willing to go on these places, she's opening up herself to shoot herself in the foot, kind of a thing, and she's not doing it wisely. But as far as was the question about why she went on, I don't remember what
it wasn't. She did not speak to anything about the case.
Yeah,
there was nothing about the case.
and I remember the reason why they brought it up was because they wanted to change the venue from Chaffee County to a different place, and they said that there was too much pre-trial publicity. And even her going on to a YouTube channel is showing that she had too much pretrial publicity. One of the videos that they showed in the courtroom was the time where she held a press conference when Barry Morphew was arrested, or the same day, and that was way before there was ever an order in place.
That's right.
And people need to realize that. But from what I saw, and even when she talked to me and did interviews with me, there were many times where I would ask a question and she said, nope, can't answer that, and she was very meticulous about what she could answer. And even she would look to all of her other coworkers, other prosecutors, and was like, we shouldn't talk about that. We shouldn't talk about, pretty much just saying we can only discuss what has been presented in the preliminary hearing. And that's it. Because at the time, that was all that we had known thus far. Someone's asking if the prosecution will put a gag order on Eton. Well, right now there's not a case. We're not in a courtroom anymore, as far as and right now I don't think, at least from co-courts, where you can get information about court proceedings in Colorado. It doesn't say that Barry Morphew is being represented for the voting charges by Iris Eton. I mean, obviously, that's who has been representing him in the previous case. So I'm assuming that's who's gonna represent him in the other. But who knows? He might find a different counsel. I don't know.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, he's had success with her, so
Yeah, he has.
So, well, Linda, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
I know there was a lot of other guests. If people that are watching, if you missed earlier, we had Tyson Draper, Duty Ron, Ed Wallace, Mike King, Tisha Leewaye, Sarah Hempelmann. We had a lot of people just to discuss and kind of wrap this up, because the case has been dismissed without prejudice. That means Barry Morphew is an innocent man. And you just got to remember, we're nearing 2 years since Suzanne Morphew went missing, and people need to keep asking questions and keep the awareness of Suzanne, because her body still has not been found, despite, in the motion to dismiss, investigators do believe they know where she is, and they're just kind of waiting for weather, and hoping and praying that they
maybe for her birthday.
Yeah, that would be,
or the anniversary.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Hopefully it'll be warm, because Colorado is very similar to Canada. So hopefully,
they have to have a small window, because even in May right now, just yesterday we saw flakes here in Colorado.
Yeah, we had snow all last week. Last week.
Oh, where in Canada are you?
Just stop. In Calgary, Alberta.
I've never been to Canada, but I've always wanted to.
Well, Colorado looks a lot like Canada, like a lot like Alberta and BC.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, you guys, thanks so much for joining me. If I have updates on the case, I'll be putting it on Twitter. That's kind of my go-to. And any articles that I post, I'll throw them on Facebook. And Linda, where can people watch you? I know you follow a ton of other cases, just to remind people.
yeah, just come to It's a Crime and on YouTube, and I cover quite a few different cases, and I don't stop until it's done. I
Yeah.
keep going. So
Well, I love your channel, so I'm a
Thanks.
fan.
thank you. Well, I got a lot of my information from you, so thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks again for watching, and
Thanks so much.
have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.